Good evening and welcome to Globespan 24/7. Thanks to Noor Singh for making this platform available and to Devin, our technical specialist. This evening, it is my honor and privilege to have with us the Honorable Minister of Public Infrastructure, the Honorable Minister Bishop Juan Edgell. I want to thank the public for joining in tonight, and I want to promise you, I know minister time is very limited us this evening, so we'll try our best to ask as many questions as we can to get our program going. Minister, welcome to the program.
Good evening, Mr. Sugrim. Good evening to all of your viewers. And let me begin by saying thanks to all of our Guyanese brothers and sisters at home, as well as those in the diaspora, who stood with us in solidarity for democracy. That tonight I'm sitting on Globespan not to debate and to challenge those who are trying to steal an election or to thwart the will of the Guyanese people, but I could be seated here as representing a democratically elected government. So I want to thank all of you for your solidarity, your good thoughts, your support, your best wishes, and thank you for allowing us this opportunity to serve the people of Guyana as your next government. So on behalf of President Irfan Ali and all of us in the cabinet, please let me extend heartfelt thanks to all of the viewers and followers of Globespan who have journeyed with us throughout the last 5 months while we were battling day and night to ensure the will of the people were protected. Thank you. And Mr. Sugrim, the second thing I would want to say is that since we've had the new administration, the ministry has gone back to its original name, Ministry of Work.
I wanted to ask you that question. I would have. That was one of my questions to you, but I'm glad you cleared it up earlier. Minister, I also want to thank you so much for taking the time out tonight to be with us on this program. I know you're one of the great sons of Guyana, and you really fought to get the last 5 months. You have really stood up, and you were on Globespan many times over the last 5 months, as you said, defending democracy in Guyana. So hats off to you, to Mr. Minister. Minister, my first question to you is this. In the last PP administration, you were minister within the Ministry of Finance. How did that stint there at the Ministry of Finance prepare you for this magnanimous position now you have, this monumental task of being the Minister of Public Works?
Well, you could almost say it was divine or divinely orchestrated, because when I came to cabinet and government in late 2011, appointed as minister within the Ministry of Finance, immediately my assignment was the management of the country's PSIP, which was the Public Sector Investment Program. And that meant that I had a large engagement with the Ministry of Public Works as the agency that was carrying out and facilitating much of the country's infrastructural development programs. So from the finance standpoint, when I went to the Ministry of Public Works, I was not meeting new faces, but I was practically meeting people that I engaged with while being the minister within the Ministry of Finance. And then secondly, some of the projects that are being managed and implemented are some of the very same projects pre-2015 that were in the pipeline, whether it was the mobilization of finances or the beginning stages of implementation. And may I hasten to add, a lot of those projects over the last 5 years have been badly mismanaged. whether it was the Sheriff Mandela upgrade, whether it was the East Bank, East Coast Interconnected Road, whether it's pursuing the modernization of the Chedijagan International Airport, whether it was the pursuing of bringing into reality the Linden to Lethem Road and the crossing at Kurukupari. These were all projects that I, as minister within the Ministry of Finance, oversaw, monitored, worked with the project units to bring them to the point where they were pre-2015. Sadly, that I've gone to the ministry last week, Thursday, and some of these very same ministry, some of these same very projects being administered by the ministry are still projects that are on paper, either a concept, now trying to get designs approved, and the rest of it. It's not a strange feel, except to say, at this time, I'm not just dealing with the financing of these capital projects, but I'm actually heading the ministry that is mandated to implement those and the others that we have committed to bring into being with the Guyanese people.
Wonderful, Minister. And having said that, when you were talking about the projects that started pre-2015 and some of them still continuing now, I've been listening to your fellow ministers. The Attorney General spoke of some, and then Minister of one of the ministers today was talking about this quandamania in the past administration. Would that be a term to be used in the way they handle the finance of our country?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just combine Durban Park, almost 1.5 billion, and add that to the new, unusable, ill-equipped COVID-19 response hospital, for what they call infectious diseases hospital, that was opened by Granger just a couple of days before the transition took place, 1.8 billion. Add to that the wastage of resources on the rental of the drug bond at Sussex Street. Add to that the expenditure of almost all of the monies on the Chedijagan International Modernization Project, and the runway is not complete. The terminal that should have been a new terminal is renovated, and it's still not complete. Add to that the fact that 4 air bridges that are there, which only 2 were delivered as a result of the contract, and the other 2 had to receive supplementary provisions, which means additional monies. And now we are hearing that they're not working. And the contract should have delivered 8 air bridges. So this administration that just came out of office, the Granger administration, have nothing to show of what they did with that almost $1.3 trillion that they expended over the period just by way of budgets. And then you have extra budgetary agencies that are broke, like the Guyana Forestry Commission. They can't pay staff. The lotto funds almost dried up. And you have nothing to show. The West Coast Road upgrade, that's not an APNU project. That was started, monies mobilized by the PPPC before we left office. The East Coast 4-lane highway monies mobilized, started under the PPPC. So if you call upon Mr. Granger and his cabinet to show to this country one infrastructural project that was successfully completed that is of benefit to the people of Guyana, the answer will be none. The Demerara Harbor Bridge, through a corrupt transaction, they raided the account of the Demerara Bridge asphalt plant, and through a corrupt arrangement, did a feasibility study. There is no bridge. There is no movement towards a bridge. We have to now take that from where it was pre-2015 and start preparing to deliver to the people of Guyana a new Demerara River crossing. So the issue was whatever little maintenance they did, whatever they completed that was already started, even what they completed, lots of it was marred in corruption because the way they did business, you did not get value for money. So we have a real problem, but I am not in a position where I should only spend my time pointing out the problems. I'm in government and we have a responsibility to fix it. And that's what we are committed to doing, fixing what needs to be fixed and modernizing Guyana through massive infrastructural development. We are talking here about, alongside what I've just mentioned, the things that we have to pursue. Just last weekend, President of Suriname was in Guyana, and the issue of the Quarantine River crossing, a bridge across the Quarantine River, is back on the agenda. You would recall that before we left office, the road all the way into where the bridge should have gone across was already built by the Ramatar administration. For 5 years, nothing was done to pursue the Quarantine River crossing. A new president in Suriname, a new president in Guyana. Sunday, it's back on the agenda, and we are moving towards that. Guyana's an oil and gas country now that is producing oil and gas that could very well be one of the leading oil and gas producers in this hemisphere. The infrastructure to facilitate such activities are lacking, whether it's shore-based facilities and other facilities to facilitate local businesses participating and benefiting from what is taking place offshore Guyana. Everything is still at Trinidad. This government for 5 years, we have to be able to expand those kinds of facilities in Guyana to be able to service the oil and gas sector.
Minister, well spoken. You have a huge, as you said, monumental task ahead of you. My question to you is, having recognized that the Granger administration spent almost 1.3 trillion Guyana dollars over the last 5 years, and as you said, many of the projects, if any, is not yet completed. What will this administration do to recoup some of those costs that seems to have been very, very corrupt practices?
Well, we did say that the contracts will be reviewed, and the Attorney General of Guyana, Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlal, has been tasked by Cabinet and His Excellency the President to review these contracts. At my ministry, I haven't even been able to see some of the contracts that fall under my ministry as yet. My permanent secretary is out of the country on leave. I don't have a deputy permanent secretary in the ministry. I have someone who's acting, who's heading the work services group, and who've been trying to provide me with all of the information that is available to him and how we can get things done. But when you go through and you go to the other agencies, for example, after an election, after the recount showed that the PPPC won these elections, this afternoon, having requested, information came to my desk to show that the government of Guyana gave a loan of $50 million to GPL.
Wow.
$50 million. Tomorrow I intend to pursue and get all of the details, because this is after March elections. This is after the June recount, then a loan agreement. The government of Guyana that couldn't find money to fix Gaisuku, to keep thousands of sugar workers and their families employed, gave a loan, and in the loan agreement it says a one-shot payment, $50 million to GPL. There are no generators here. There is no improvement in the present base load generation capacity and efficiency to the consumers of where electricity is concerned. No public announcement or dealings with this matter. But that's a whole lot of money, $50 million. So the squandermania had to do with how they did business, and the fact that even if they spent money, people did not get value for the money. And the people of Guyana were not the beneficiaries. We had a 200-meter bridge in a city fence at Danzig in the Maikoni area. That 200-meter bridge, even though contracts were awarded for the fixing of the bridge, it's now a 5 kilometers bridge. Money spent, contracts awarded, but the bridge is currently 5 kilometers. So you're spending money, and rather than fixing a 200-meter bridge, the bridge is expanding. So you'll be dumping money as if you're putting it into a dark hole. So we have to be able to salvage that kind of an operation and ensure that all of our contractors and the consultants that oversee those contracts understand there's a new sheriff in town, so to speak. And the new sheriff is not going to take the bluff, the fluff, and the gab. We want deliverables. So that is what we will do different. And that is what we will do to stop that waste and that seepage and leakage.
And Minister, you're so passionate and so genuine what you're saying there. And I really, really hope, and I think the Guyanese people is looking forward, that this government that they voted for will hold the former government accountable for all the shenanigans that they did. I mean, we've been hearing of all these workers that are paid that is not in the country with all these huge salaries and benefits and gratuity and all these sort of things that they accused the former PPP government of doing. And they were doing exactly the same, if not even worse. So I really hope that, and listen to you tonight, that the Attorney General and the Minister of Legal Affairs will go after these people, and we will definitely have to bring some justice to the people of Guyana. So thank you so much for that, Minister. Minister, I know you talk about all the different projects within your portfolio, the airport being one, the East Coast Highway, and so on and so on. What about our waterways? What about our vessels in the maritime area? How many ships are done? Are they working efficiently? Did you get a report from your maritime people on that?
Well, the Transport and Harbors Department is the agency that supervises water transport. I have had an opportunity of meeting with a general manager, and as a matter of fact, we'll have a further meeting with her tomorrow. The people of Leg 1 and Wakenham and Bartica and Region 1, which will include both Kumaka and Port Kaituma, want to have a service that is reliable as well as predictable. You know, Charles, before we left office, the Donald Ramatar administration had mobilized and had a commitment for the building of a new ferry to Region 1. It's now 2020. We left government in 2015 May. There's no new ferry to Region 1. So that's something I have to pick up. I'm meeting with the Indian High Commission on Friday, and that's one of the things that we'll be talking about, getting that moving. So the point that I'm making, whatever the APNU met when they came into office, they mismanaged it. Most of it deteriorated, and they have done nothing new. We have the Hinterland Electricity Program, where we have put in small units compatible with the size, whether it's Lethem, Mabaruma, Matthews Ridge, Port Kaituma, I think it's 7 areas. Do you know that Matthews Ridge have been without electricity since March of this year?
Wow.
And when I met with the people in charge of that unit, which is the Hinterland Electricity Company, Inc., the problem was maintenance. And they're telling me now that we need $200 million to service and maintain those generating sets to ensure that we're up to par, that the people could have continuous electricity. So what would you have done for 5 years? A generator set is down. Today when I spoke with the regional chair, and we contacted the people in Matthews Ridge, when they told you about all the woes and how things would have gone, I'm convinced I cannot be a minister that sits in an air-conditioned office. I have to be a minister that is out there on a daily basis, fixing the issues. That is why I was pleased that my colleague in the ministry, minister within the Ministry of Public Works, Mr. Indar, went out into the area of the Maikoni to get a first-hand review. I did a desk review with the technical people, the financing, and to be able to look and see what can be done. He went and he had a physical look-see. He has since reported to me and briefed me on what is taking place out there. We have to be able to make the necessary tough decisions. The issue here is that this is not just about public relations, because you could make the pictures look good, but if the beneficiaries, the Guyanese people, are not satisfied, you're fooling yourself. And we've had a lot of that glamour and glitz from the APNU AFC over the last 5 years, but it's not there.
Minister, and I have to confess to you that I supported the AFC, and in 2015 I did campaign with them, but they have really disappointed all their supporters. They have disappointed the Guyanese people. We thought they would have stood up, but what you're telling us, what you're telling the nation tonight, is that they squandered the taxpayers' money. And that's why I know people like Sesna Ryan Singh and Joel Bagwandin and Danrat Singh and some others, they were working and telling us what the Bank of Guyana report is showing, that our treasury is dry, our foreign exchange currency is down, our gold reserve is down. They have squandered every single thing. And that's what I'm saying. What you're saying tonight and what the president has been saying for the last week or two, you have an Herculean task ahead, and we can only pray that God will give you guys the strength and the wisdom and the courage and understanding to do what has to be done. But we also hope and pray that these people who brought our country to its knees will also be held accountable. Minister, you mentioned this infrastructure that you talk about and the amount of capital that you need. Here this Saturday in New York, Dr. Euclid Rose is meeting a team of New Yorkers, and we're putting together a plan of how we can, what we can do to enhance those activities. One of my proposals, Minister, if you don't mind, listen to it, is that Guyanese at home and abroad, we don't have huge resource individually. Some of us are blessed with great resources, but most of us have a $2,000 or $3,000. What I'm proposing, and the president will have to, if they accept our plan, is to launch what is called a Guyana Development Fund. And the people in the diaspora and in Guyana, they can pool their 2,000, 3,000 together into a development fund, whatever form it takes, because you need huge capital investment. And if we can get a private-public partnership, I think in the next 5 years, Guyana will be one of the greatest places on earth to live in. What are your views of that?
Well, I think it's an excellent proposal, and it's not one that runs opposed to the principles of which the PPPC intends to engage. We want to see stakeholder participation. We want to ensure that in our investment and developmental trusts, Guyanese are at the forefront of that. We're the ones who brought the model of the private-public partnership for the development of infrastructural projects into Guyana. We tabled such a paper in the Parliament, and we will be pursuing private-public partnerships. So I think it's going in the right direction. Once properly managed and engaged in the correct area, I think it could blossom forth into something beautiful and glorious. So it is something that needs to be encouraged.
Oh, thank you, Minister, for giving the blessings to that. So we are meeting this Saturday to go through some of those things. Minister, before you go, and I know you have to run, I want to talk about the COVID restriction, the repatriation of there are a lot of Guyanese here in New York and different parts of the world who want to come back home. Here in New York, what is happening, or what was happening, was that a person who wants to go back home, they have to go online and make an application to the Consul General in New York. Then they'll have to submit their COVID test, and once it's negative, then the Consul General will forward that to the COVID operation in Guyana. They will look at the list, they will approve it or disapprove, then they will send it to the Civil Aviation, then Civil Aviation will send it to the Eastern Airline. Eastern Airline will give the passenger either a night before or the day before to get ready to fly, to travel. Now, they only accept credit card. So if the person have a credit card, and most Guyanese who come on holiday don't have a credit card, so now the family has to go and pay it for them and so on. Are you reviewing that policy, and can the agent, a travel agent, pick up that responsibility where the person can go in and pay the travel agent directly, whether in cash or in credit card, so they can come back home and cut out the bureaucracy of going back to Guyana and then coming back here? Because once you test negative, and the airline will also want to ensure that the people on the aircraft are negative, then this bureaucracy is really causing a lot of confusion. Will you address that issue?
Well, I can tell you it has already been addressed. The political handling for political purposes of the COVID-19 pandemic has come to an end. President Irfan Ali have put in place a COVID-19 response, and all of the decisions that we are making are people-centered to ensure the sustainable livelihoods of people, the safety of people, the well-being of people. Let's come to my sector and what you're talking about, repatriation flights. You would have seen a schedule of approved flights from the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority published, and it's now public. Because when we got in, the COVID task force that we met was taking so long to approve a flight, and that is what caused the hurrying of the night before and the day before. And then when people had their COVID-19 tests and 7 days had passed, because the whole bureaucracy was taking 14 or 15 days, you had to almost go back and get a second test to be able to satisfy the requirement. So all of that is out of the window. I've instructed the Director General of Civil Aviation in Guyana to prepare a plan in keeping with all of the protocols, and we will be discussing that with Dr. Frank Anthony, the Minister of Health, because ultimately we have to reopen the airport for commercial flights, not just merely repatriation flights. And that is not only to do with the airport at Tamiri, but it would have to be at Ogle, and we also have to look at the appropriate time about when we open the ferry crossing at Suriname, and which is something for discussion at the high level between the presidents and the strategic task force that was put in place over the weekend when the president of Suriname visited. So the movement of our people in a safe, sanitized, COVID-free environment is high on our agenda, and we are doing so by cutting out the bureaucracy, and we don't want to punish people because of some political agenda. This afternoon I've learned that there are some 300 plus Canadians that are still in Guyana to get back home, who have been trapped here, who are on vacation and the rest of it. And we are looking at ways and means of how we could make sure that that gets through. But you have to remember, at this present stage, the sending country and the receiving country must have certain assurances, and we must be able to follow protocols because we have to safeguard the well-being of our nations. But we are looking and we are working, and one of the ways we have already cut short that time and make it more accessible for people to get the flights is that you could know ahead of time. Next week, there's a flight on this day because it's already approved. The 20-something is a flight because it's already approved. So people will have adequate time to get their tickets, get their flight arrangements made, and all the rest of it.
Thank you, Minister. That you've been very, very clear on that. I mean, but in saying that, when you foresee the airport opening up back for, like you said, commercial flights, regular flights, is that likely to happen anytime soon?
Well, we want it to happen as soon as is practicable in the environment that is safe. And those protocols are being worked out. And I'm not talking about in a bureaucratic, we meet today and then we meet next week and all the rest of it. My colleague, Dr. Frank Anthony, is on this 24/7, and he is doing a fantastic job. The Prime Minister, Mr. Mark Phillips, is on that as well, and we are working to get that done. So ultimately, those reports will come to Cabinet, and at the appropriate time, they're based upon our findings and our state of readiness, because it might mean that we have to put in capital expenditure to facilitate that. The Chedijagan International Airport is losing money every month because of the lack of flights coming in. The Ghana Civil Aviation Authority is losing money because part of their revenue comes with flights that are flying through our airspace. So when you have these kinds of restrictions, there are difficulties that you face even in terms of your revenue. But we put people first. And because we put people first, we have to be able to ensure our people are safe, their well-being is protected, and that whatever we are battling in country currently is that we're able to flatten the curve. And at our last cabinet meeting, COVID-19 and our responses is high on the agenda and remains high on the agenda. And our people who are leading that thrust, they are doing everything possible to ensure that we get that. You would have seen the discussion about schools reopening. The Minister of Education, the Honorable Priyamani Chan, and Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, with the assistance of the advisor and advice of Dr. Leslie Ramsamy. They are working on these initiatives. So these are not next month, next year discussions. These are current, active, aggressive discussions to ensure we get our people safe, people are able to move, trade is able to resume, goods and services are able to come into the country, and we're able to get things moving in a correct way. So that is about what I could say at this time.
Minister, thank you. I know I took a lot of your time, but before you go, I want to make a confession. I know you're a man of God. I want to make a confession. When the PPP selected Dr. Ali as the candidate, a lot of people was disappointed, and I was disappointed too. I thought that they could have had a better candidate. But I want to tell you that I was terribly wrong. When I listened to the president at his swearing in and what he said after, I believe that this president is so genuine. He sounds so genuine. His body language is so amazing. And I believe, and I hope President Jack Dale don't get annoyed with what I'm saying, but I believe that President Ali is on his way. If he continue like this, he will be the greatest president of our country. He has started with an excellent cabinet. I think with your support and with the other senior members of the party support, with all the young people that he has selected for his cabinet, I believe that our country is in the right hands. And Minister, I want to wish you and the government all the best. And Guyanese look forward. I believe a lot of Guyanese are talking about coming back home to live. But I said, hold on, don't go yet, because there's a lot of things still to be done. And we hope that together we can work to get the Guyanese people back home, because we need at least 2 million people to live in Guyana. And if all the Guyanese overseas can come back home, I think that will be a great thing. So, Minister, in closing, what do you want to say? I know you have to, and thank you so much for taking your time out to be with us. I want to give you the time now to tell us anything that you want to say in closing.
Well, just to give the assurance to all the people of Guyana, President Ali, and all of us as members of his cabinet, we are committed to working for all Guyanese, every Guyanese, all of our people. We want to be able to see Guyana grow. We want to see Guyana being modernized. We want to see Guyana being transformed. We want to see Guyana moving from being a developing country to becoming a developed country. Guyana must be a star in this hemisphere. And it is with that kind of indoctrination and outlook that we approach our work. And we don't see ourselves as ruling. We see ourselves as serving. We will govern Guyana by serving the people of Guyana and ensuring that all the people are taken care of. When I was in Globespan before, the transition took place, I was assuring even PNC supporters that we will take care of them. The election cycle is over, and in our books, we don't have PPP and PNC. We came to office through a party that caused us to be elected. Now that we are in office, the party remains, but we are a government for all the people of Guyana. And we would like to give that assurance to everyone. So we look forward for their support, their cooperation. We hope that those who were misguided have seen the light, and that we all will join hands together, and we will build Guyana as one people, one nation, with one destiny. So thank you for having me. Sorry I can't spend more time with you tonight, but I have to go on to another activity.
Minister, again, I want to thank you so much for being with us, and God bless you, and God bless the government of Guyana, and of course the people of Guyana. Thank you so much. We'll now go to a break, and then when we come back, we'll have some other guests on our program. Thank you, Minister. Okay. Welcome back to our audience in Globespan 24/7. We want to thank you for staying with us. We just had Minister of Public Works, Minister Juan Edgel. He was gracious to have us for the first part, but we have no less now two of Guyana's outstanding sons. These gentlemen were the forefront of democracy in Guyana for the last 5 months, and Guyana owed them a deep sense of gratitude and thank you. So that's why we invite them tonight to say to Dr. Josh Kanai and to Mark Franz, thank you, gentlemen, for standing up for democracy, for defending democracy. Thank you, guys, for playing such a pivotal role in the recount to ensure the ballots were well secured and everything else. Guyana, salute you guys tonight. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Mr. Silver.
All right, gentlemen, having heard Minister Edgel, and I think he was so clear in his direction and what he wanted to get done, one of the issue I was discussing with was that even though President Ali have an excellent cabinet, I think the cabinet is amazing, but some people were saying that maybe he should have had maybe one or two more people of the original people, the Amerindians, in his cabinet, and maybe some more of mixed ancestry. What are your views on that?
Good night.
Yes, Mark, go on. Yeah.
Good night to all of the viewers on Globespan. Mr. Sugrim, I have always been somebody who feels that if there is any position, any leadership position, any position of significance whereby you lead Guyanese or you implement plans and policies, then you should have the best person for the job. I always believe in having the best person for the job. And when we start talking about quotas and looking at, oh, you need to have so much from a particular race or ethnic makeup, then you're defeating the whole purpose of having the best persons. You don't just put persons there to make up numbers or to get the photograph looking nice or good. I always believe in having the best person. So we have a cabinet currently. I saw it's 24 members, and maybe one person is of indigenous descent. And there have been questions that, oh, you know what? Yes, this cabinet has more persons who are of ethnic origin, ethnic Indian origin rather, or Indo-Guyanese. But the truth is, these persons are only the ministers. There are so many other roles for important persons in the, well, of varying backgrounds. So many roles for them to fill out and for them to play in how we move forward our country. Therefore, it does not matter to me the numbers of indigenous leaders on the cabinet or not, or the numbers of mixed leaders or Afro leaders or Afro-Guyanese leaders, rather, Indo-Guyanese leaders. If you're the best person, and this is where the issue comes at hand, because for me, you have to prove that if you have been selected, then you have to put Guyana first. And that is a challenge that is out there to all of the persons who have been selected in the cabinet, all the persons who will be selected to the different senior roles, be it as advisors, as managers, as head of different agencies. It's for you now to perform not only for your race or not only for your constituency, but for the entire Guyanese population, because that is why you're there. You're there to put Guyana and the interests of all Guyanese first and foremost. And that is where I believe we will see who is well suited and who can perform in a job.
Well said, Mark. Dr. Kanai, what do you think?
Good night, Mr. Charles Sugrum.
Good night, Doc.
First time on your show, and I would love to extend my thank yous. And I am thankful that we could have come this far in the entire maturity and in the entire events that occurred in Guyana. At this time, I've seen all that has been going on with the ministers being appointed, with the members of cabinet, etc., and the other fellow members of parliament has not yet been appointed. We wait for that. But I've been looking at it all of the fold, and this point that Mark has brought up, based on meritocracy, is one that I fully support and one that the new movement was campaigning on along with the joiner list, right? And Mark has developed that point quite well. So in addition to that, I would like to give another angle. These persons who seek to have such remarks, they need to come off their high horses. They need to stop causing mischief within this society. We have come a very far way. We have matured as a nation, and I say this based on this past election. We have matured because we have not seen riots in the street. We have not seen people lambasting and bombasting each other, other than those few hopefully learned individual would have not done this, right? So in the essence of it, what I'm trying to say is that this causes more of a racial division. Let us not look on our color. Let us not look on our skin. Let us look on that one people, one nation, one destiny motto that we follow, right? And as Guyanese, once we see that, we'll be our brother's keeper and we'll start pulling each other up. At this point in time, I believe the People Progressive Party, Civic, has appointed some outstanding folks. I, myself, and Mark would have worked with some of them at the Recount Center, and we would have seen how hard working they are, right? Just to name one, Vikram Bharat, he was always there in his corner, crunching numbers, making sure that everything was in order and none of the figures would have mismatched the SOPs, etc. Mr. Deodat Indar was there constantly. These are the youths I'm talking about. The youths were dominant there, right? Sorry, I'm going to be a bit long-winded. This is
No, go on. You have the platform.
yeah, this is me just expressing everything since it's the first time on here, right? And they see I'm Dr. John Kanai. That's my name, right, Mark?
I saw you change your name.
Name, Mark.
Oh, it's
right.
John is with Josh, right?
No worries.
Yeah.
Guyana now can figure out who we are, and we're thankful for the Guyanese people. Let me go off on a limb. I'm very thankful to the Guyanese people, each and every single one of you. You've done an outstanding job based on what has gone on in this election. So thank you to all my fellow Guyanese brothers and sisters. friends and neighbors, beloved ones, everyone, thank you for standing with us for democracy. So let me jump back to that point there. Sorry. Let me jump back to that point where we're getting to these racial intentions and mischief. So I hope that I would have explained to you somewhat. And these persons, to put it in a little summaries, they're out to cause mischief. We're not looking at race, we're not looking at color, we're looking at me and you and Mark and the entire Guyana as one people, one nation, one destiny. Moving forward in that fashion, we'll see that each and every race will be well represented because we're going to start pushing each and every one of these races. It's your culture, it's not a race. So let's keep moving forward in the fashion where we have meritocracy and we keep this whole skin color nonsense out of the picture.
Thank you, Doc. That's excellent, both of you. And I totally agree with you guys. I mean, ethnic composition of a team is one thing, but as both of you guys said, meritocracy is what we need in Guyana. But having said that, let us not think that there is not people of merit from the other communities. There are people of merit from all over. But again, there's only so much the president can actually appoint. I mean, President Granger had like about almost 30 ministers. I hope we don't have that among in this rung. Gentlemen, you'd have heard. I don't know if you heard when I told Minister Ejil that when the PP selected Dr. Ali, a lot of Guyanese who I spoke to were not very impressed. They think that they were better candidates. But having listened to the president since his swearing in, and the way he has spoken to the Guyanese people, with his magnanimity that he has in him, and with his body language and his tone of his voice, and the genuineness I think that he's bringing forward, I believe that the PPP has selected the best candidate. What are your views?
That selection of the presidential candidate and who is now the president, that is entirely a PPP subject matter that I do not wish to touch on. I myself initially, and I probably still do, think that there were persons, or there is a person who is a much better pick for a presidential candidate, but we have to respect the wishes of the system which is in place in the People's Progressive Party. And what I can say for sure is that from the moment that he was selected, whatever process was used, Mr. Ali, Dr. Ali as he's known now, has always been, it's not about me, it's all about the team. And this has been crucial because sometimes you have leaders out there who are way ahead of the rest. We know there's one political leader in the APNU AFC who is miles ahead of everyone else and is the only person that can pull them together. We know there's an outstanding leader in the PPPC who is head and shoulders above the rest. But the current president has always been about the team. It is not about me. It is about the team that I have behind me. And this team is going to push us towards victory because one person cannot do it. And so the entire election stretch and way before, it was teamwork. It was the now president going and doing the rounds, meeting with the folks in the riverine areas, in the small communities, being on the ground. And by being such a leader, by showing this is how it's going to be done, he has forced the People's Progressive Party to get back in tune with their main voting bloc, which is the poor Guyanese citizen who is in the different villages and the different areas. And this is something that they would have lost out, or this is something that they would have fell out of touch with in their 23 years. They would have taken the vote of the normal man and woman for granted. And this is something that they reestablished, and it's something that has helped them greatly, powering them to victory, a greater victory than what the APNU AFC had in 2015. Right? So it is the team. And what I have seen is a sort of evolution in the thinking of the PPP seats. Because first it was a lot of what we call strong-minded and strong-handed leaders, whereby they try to control everything and get them to see their way alone. But now you can see the push, or at least the talk for pushing for inclusion, bringing the opposition more into play, getting more people into play, reaching out to the business community, reaching out to the different non-governmental organization and other groups which are out there. Because if you need to manage the wealth of the country, if you need to ensure that democracy is viable in Guyana, you need to bring everyone on board, right? And it comes from the leadership. And if it's the leader who is all out in being inclusive and in trying to be inclusive, then that is probably the best way to start. I have to warn about something though, because whilst we talk about inclusionary governance, we just don't want it to be a photo op. We actually want to listen to the input, to the policies, to the advice that are coming from other persons outside of those that make up the government. I can give a quick example. This weekend, some of the smaller parties were asked to attend a luncheon. I think Josh was there with the president and the minister of health, basically to have a breakdown of where we are in terms of fighting COVID and stuff. This is the information that was filtered down back to me. But what we need is for this to be done in such a manner whereby everyone is included. And I have seen persons out there already saying, oh, you know what, this small party was left out and this other party was left out and the opposition was left out. We need to don't have such conversations. We need to do things in such a way that everyone is included from the get-go. So no one can say that, oh, you know what, we were left out, our voice was not heard. Those who we represent, they don't have a voice in decision making. We need to include everybody. And again, it comes down to the president because he is the ultimate leader of the country currently, but the team which is around him, that is very important.
But Mark, as you said, and Josh will come in a minute, but you said this was a COVID-19 task force, so you expect the medical doctors, the health workers, and so on. So
no,
I don't think
it was not a task force. Josh can probably tell you those who attended. It was not anything to do with task force. It was just basically to update that, okay, this is what we would have found out so far, and we just for me, what it looked more like was a photo op. I was not present. I am a medical doctor on Arnold's team, but there was another person who attended, and the manner which it was done, right? It was an ad hoc meeting, more or less, right? I can understand if it was just okay, the chance to meet and said, okay, we can work on doing this. But if you want to portray that it was done by the government and some of their persons who operate their social media platform and in the news and stuff, it made it seem as though, yes, we're reaching out here officially in this manner. Josh can probably say a lot more about it, but I'm just saying everyone needs to be involved.
And before Josh come on, I wanted to remind Devin it's Dr. Josh Kanai, not John Kanai, Devin. So yes, Josh, go on.
Yeah, Mark had a mouthful there.
Yeah.
I'll get to your question, Mr. Sugrim. Basically, I personally would think that the president's election would have been one based on strategy, one based on the party's internal affairs, and one based on the question of what does the Guyanese people want at this moment in time, right? So that would have occurred, and Dr. Ali was selected from the get-go. He was the man out of the chamber first, right? And he was promoted as a youth, and it was well done. And the man he is 40 years old at the moment. He is 5 years above the normal age for youth. But after working with, after being around Dr. Ali at the Recount Center, listening to him and his team usually go over all these legal matters which they were fighting and which they were going to put forward, I noticed that he was always involved. And as Mark was rightly saying, it's teamwork, right? And at the end of the day, that's a very well aspect or very well character trait which I look for in someone who I decide to give my respect to, right? And that is one of the most important ones, because with your ability to swallow pride and work in a team, you show that you have more than yourself and your mind and your pride at heart. You have much more of the people around you at heart. And from working with him, I believe that I would have seen those traits and a lot more other than the stiff work face. He has some jokes, and in the essence of it, I see him as he's going to be a great leader, and I hope that we're not let down. And I'm pretty sure that we wouldn't, because again, it's strategy, and as Mark was alluding to, everyone at this point in time I would say, should move forward, and they should not lingo and limbo and mingo on the past. Mingo is gone. Everything is done. President right now.
Mingo is now gone.
Yes, you don't.
There will be a court case for Mingo in due time.
Okay, gentlemen. Yeah,
There
go
will
on,
be,
Josh. Sorry. Yeah, go on.
sorry, there will not be in limbo, lingo, or mingo. Let's move forward, Guyana. Let's give our support and our confidence to this newly elected president of Guyana, Dr. Konali. And let us also not forget that we are here as people and we pay them to look after us. We pay them our taxes for them to make decisions for us. So let's not forget that holding accountable aspect of this entire portfolio.
And gentlemen, this now brings me to the next question that I want to pose to both of you. If President Ali continued the way that he has carried himself for the last 2 weeks, he will win the hearts of the majority of Guyanese, which means that in the next election, he will have a landslide victory. Now, the question is this. Two of you are from the new parties. If the president says, Josh, Dr. Kanai, Dr. France, I want you to come and work with me. Let us together move the country forward. I know I talked to Dr. Kisoon, and she wants to be on the outside looking in. I talked to Mr. Jonas. I think he also think the same way. Gentlemen, Josh, you're the general secretary of the party, I think, and Mark, I'm not sure. Are you general secretary as well?
No, I'm not a general secretary. I'm just on the executive.
Okay, but what if Dr. Ali invite you guys to be part of the administration? What do you do then?
Josh, go
on.
first.
Yeah, Josh, go on.
Mark, throw in some. First, thanks, Mark. But yeah, at this point in time, I think I was on room 592 and I had the same question. And to the Guyanese people, I'm a youth. I'm a true youth. I have an age that some of you might not believe. And please don't ask me that tonight, Mr. Sogram. But I'm a youth, and you see, my mindset is more on inclusivity and true, genuine, absolute inclusivity of the Guyanese people. And the government, I should say, as well. So you can already tell from my answer that I will not forsake my political party in any point in time, and definitely will not forsake the people of Guyana. But at this point, we have to show that we can work together as an independent. As Mark was alluding to in the previous statement, he has to include everyone. And it's time for us to throw off that nonsense about high horse and who's gonna scrutinize and whatever. The people of Guyana are here to be served. We are running. The journal was running on the principle of shared governance. Let's take this as a step and let's move forward and let us see how well a shared governance formula can work. This is where it would start. And I would love to be the man that will carry on this spark throughout the entire third force. Let us see how we can reach to that point of shared governance, because you would give some merit to that shared governance. The Suriname just had its election, and their way of shared governance is that 2/3 of parliament will elect the minister. So that's where now meritocracy.
The president.
President, sorry, and the minister, well, I believe. So that sort of shared governance that Suriname has there represents a whole 2/3 of the people. So let's move together in that fashion. Even the opposition, I would say to the PPP, you would need advice from the oppositions and from the people that that would be respectable in these meetings. You would appreciate their advice, and I would urge that they too come together and work. So I'm urging persons that would have gotten the opportunity to extend a helping hand to the task force, a helping hand to one of the ministries to get the ideas of the youths out and the ideas of the people who are not represented out. Just let's get this thing started. We don't have any time to.
Just can you focus your camera a little? That's better, right? Yeah, beautiful. No, excellent comment. Mark, what do you think?
Mr. Sugar, we're 1 week into the new government, 8 days to be exact. So we're getting ahead of ourselves a lot here. The APNU AFC, they have still been supported, according to the last poll, by close to 48, 49% almost of the voting population, or a little less maybe. We know for sure that there is a built-in support for the PNC, maybe of 30% of Guyanese, and that will always be, it will take quite some time for that to change. We have seen since elections in 2006, when the AFC came, that there is possibly a 30,000, 35,000 swing voting population that is there, and it may have grown because it probably is the only population that has grown, because you're looking at the mixed votes and those independents. So when you talk about a landslide, I can't agree with you there. I personally believe that this election result is the max for the PPPC. It's the strongest they can be. When you are in government, it's you against everyone else, because everyone will be looking at you. Everyone will be looking at you to see, oh, you know what? This is what was said in the manifesto. This is what was promised. Have they delivered? Have they delivered adequately? Your governance on the whole is questioned, and you don't get what we call the sympathy vote. The sympathy vote is very important. When you're out of government, that sympathy vote, sometimes it helps to carry you over. Now all of your mistakes will be highlighted. Now all of the issues that continue to affect people, they will be highlighted. So this is probably the PPPC at its strongest. And yes, if you govern properly, if you are transparent, if you include everyone, you may probably maintain the same amount of support. But as far as I see, there is still room, and there will always be room for the moderates, for the independents, for those persons who are thinking about a unity government, in a better form of inclusive governance. We're talking about inclusivity here. And it is a talk that has been there since independence. It is a talk that has been there since 1992, when Dr. Chedi Jagan came into power. But we have not seen any real progress. We have seen constitutional reforms, minimal at best, the establishment of different committees, the establishment of different oversight agencies. But how effective are they? That's the big question that is out there. They are not very effective. And until we can have those agencies being effective with this system of governance, then we will not have true inclusivity. And it will still be the winner take all. Yes, you're going to have what people say, oh, the lesser of two evil. But the lesser of two evil is always evil. Our proposal, and this is Anuk's proposal, it's something that still needs to be put out there to the people in terms of them having proper education. What we are proposing is for shared executive governance. It's something that many people might find an issue with and said, oh, you know what, it's not popular, it's not around in the world, it won't work in Guyana. But right now, if you go out there, you're going to find 40-45% of the population feeling dejected, feeling that they have lost, or feel that they have no hope, right? It's for the government of the day to try to convince them differently by including them in their decision making, by including them in everything that they're doing for Guyana and for Guyanese. That is the only way you can bring them on board, right? But I still feel that if we're to go on an election in the next 5 years, the APNU AFC, or whatever name they come under, they will still have a significant support, right? My hope is that the third forces can be able to find a way to come together and be a more credible third force. One where our objective, this is Anuk's objective that we had for this election, is to have that balance of power. And I feel if the third forces can find a way to come together, and I don't think it's very difficult, because we all share a lot of similarities in terms of what we want for Guyana. I am very sure that we can have that balance of power, because we have seen great growth since March the 2nd to now.
And you know what? That's why I'm telling you, God is blessed with Guyana having sons like you guys. I mean, you've spoken so well. You're very focused in what you want to get done. But before I ask you the question, I just want to remind you that if if President Ali renegotiate the oil contract and we get a better deal with the oil contract, right now we're getting basically crumbs. There's thousands and thousands of Guyanese who are living overseas who will come back home to live because Guyana will be a place to live rather than the United States. I mean, the United States, as we know, is going through so much trouble, and I don't think it's getting any better. So a lot of people will come back home, and I believe a lot of those people will support the administration if Dr. Ali continues his policy that he seems to be pursuing. So I just want to talk, just mention that. But now, gentlemen, what you guys both mentioned is constitutional reform. I know Anok has had that at the top of your agenda. I'm not sure if TNM has that in their agenda, but what do we want to recommend to this government, President Ali government, what we should change in our constitution to reflect that, like Suriname, for instance. I know Trinidad have the election today. By tonight, by midnight, they will know who win the election. By now, they should be, I think, they're getting results in Trinidad. So the thing is, what do we have to do to get that kind of arrangement like Suriname or Trinidad in the form of a shared governance? What do we have to do in our constitution? Mark, you can go.
That form of governance that they have and that system that they have in place. Well, first of all, Trinidad has what we call first past the post.
Right.
So they currently are having their elections, and there are two major parties, the PNM and the UNC, have been following them for quite some time for this election cycle. And we have seen the emergence of some smaller parties. But really and truly in the first past the post system, there is great difficulty for any small party to actually have a say. You have to be a really popular individual in a constituency. You really would have had to do great things for your constituency for you to win as an independent or as a new party. Our system is a hybrid system. Our system has some amount of regional representation and proportional representation. What I believe is that we can find some way of altering the system, and this is what Anuk has proposed. We currently have a system whereby 25 of the seats for our National Assembly, they come from what is supposed to be the regional system, but really and truly they come from a list system. So it's a list of persons who may come or may qualify to be from a region, but they do not necessarily live in that region. They may not know the issues that are affecting the region. What we need to do is find some way of changing that. So what we are proposing, or what we would like to propose, is to increase the number of seats for the regional system from 25 to 50, but put in a clause whereby these persons have to be active in their constituencies. So they have to be selected by their constituency. So it's not really first past the post, but it means that these persons will represent their constituency and they are held responsible by those constituents, right? The other 15 seats, we still believe should come via the proportional representation system, whereby it gives the party with the most vote more say in governance of the country. The election system in Suriname is more reflective of those that are in the European countries, right? Whereby you have the possibility of having a coalition after the votes. In the Guyanese system, which we have currently, you have to do whatever joining of list coalition before or just after nomination day, as the joining of list would have proven, you can do that join up. This has led to a lot of persons sticking to the two main parties, and they've been afraid to support or join smaller parties. Well, the AFC is the exception. They have had great support, and they have not used it wisely. But this is a system that we can look at, and it is one of the systems that can be proposed. So Anuk has our system whereby we're looking for shared executive governance, a rotating presidency, right, and a parliament which is totally independent from the presidency.
The executive, okay.
Right? But it's a difference in system. And the important thing to note here, it's something that has to be done through consultation with the entire Guyanese public, because we can propose something. You, Mr. Sugam, you can propose a system. You can find all the legalities in it, all the loopholes, and you plug everything. But it has to represent the wishes of the people. And that is why any form of constitutional reform, it normally goes through consultations with the populace and then their representatives in Parliament vote on whatever is put forward. And given the current setup that we have in Parliament, for any major law to be changed, or for any amendment to the Constitution, major amendment, these types of amendment rather, you need to have a two-thirds majority. So it would mean that you need to have support of the person who is in government and the majority opposition. So you need everyone being on board, right? That has always been the issue that we have had in Guyana. I don't know how we can try to change it, but what I can tell you for sure is that there are certain issues and certain things which can be changed with simple majority vote, right?
Okay.
The makeup of the different organizations, the different commissions, these things can be changed with simple majority vote.
All right,
So
Mark.
this is something that we can look at.
All right, let's hear what Josh has to say. Josh, what do you recommend? Will your party be pushing for constitutional reform, and what some of the things you will want to see change in the Constitution?
Well, at this point in time, our aspect of constitutional reform was a bit broader. We didn't just focus on that one aspect, but that was one of the priority aspect, I should say, with the formulation of government. But on the other hand, my comments towards the formulation of government, I mentioned earlier that we should move forward to that sort of shared governance, and I use Suriname as an example. And my thing is that we reach a point with ANOG's principle of shared governance. There is a hindrance and there is a roadblock to that mechanism of action, right? So at this point, one of the solutions I would see for that is where we are right now, where we need to push these inclusivity in government, make them something positive, show the people that we have matured and we can do it that way. From that angle now, we can, of course, gain that one side seat of balance in the next and upcoming election. And that way we can now maneuver ourselves and make much more of an imprint to change the sort of economic system. Because before you change the constitution is the framework, the backbone, the skeleton of the entire country. That's what we run on. And as we've called it in the, I've become somewhat of a lawyer now listening to all these great
All of us became lawyers.
I'm thinking about doing it to Axperala. But the Constitution is supreme law. And everything else molds around that, right? So what we need to do is also look at our changes in the economic system that we have set up, or the system whereby people are represented, right? And I would say more of a US kind of hybrid, the United States senator system. That is an absolute true form of democracy, where you have the federal system developing, and then only certain powers are given to the Mr. President. And then most of the power is given within the states, right? And those states now have their right to form their own they have their own right to elections, where they have their persons being elected and entering that Senate committee. And then we will have now the entire economics of that country is funneled into that city instead of parliament, which we have one big one. They have several into us. So it's an executive body. You have the CEO, you have the board of directors, which are usually all of that 50 seat mark is talking about. And then you have now the other managers coming in, where you have more at the federal system, right? That's something I was proposing, an economic zone shift of our country, but it's something to be looked at by experts. It's just a little idea of mine, and maybe we can discuss that sometime else. For constitutional reform, we're also looking at getting our youths that power and that right, so that local content can be something of vast importance and something that's not taken lightly. And within that policy, or within that legislation per se, a local content legislation, within that per se, you would have protocols and stipulations and guidelines as to if a youth can obtain a scholarship, set a criteria, so that in that way now we don't have one set of youths, nepotism occurring, where one set of youths come and get the scholarship. Now you have a criteria within the legal aspect that can be followed, and once that's followed, equality will remain on top of the entire situation. And if it doesn't, then we have the court system to now battle that. So we go through a court system to solve all of our issues, right? That's just a a tip or taste of that content. We now look at the local content, the aspect of the youths having copyright for their creative arts, their creative industry. Our youths have so much potential that it's something for a whole 2 other 3 other shows, right?
Yeah.
That potential now can be not taken seriously because it has a law protecting it. So that was what we wanted. We wanted laws in place that can basically protect the people, protect their content, protect their intellect, protect every single aspect of them, so that when the day comes, it will decrease crime rate. So the man doesn't have to go chop his neighbor because he tried to take a piece of his land, or he tried to get the scholarship before, blah blah blah. It's just a little analogy. So in the end, that's the benefit of it too, because you have the court system and you have people of maturity, people of education to use these court systems and these legislations. It provides jobs for more lawyers. We'll have more lawyers. It's a whole correlated impact, if I should put it, right? Yes, the new movement has drafted the roadmap to prosperity. If you have not taken a read of that thing, trust me, you should read that, and you will read the other edition that's going to come out of that roadmap to prosperity. It's something that everyone I encourage to read, and if you don't have a copy of it, I can get that for you. Right. So at this point, back to the question. Um, our constitutional reform has so much aspects, and we want each and every one of them to be addressed. We want to address them now. We want them to happen now. We don't want to fight against them. So that's why I'm saying, at this point in time, the way Dr. Ali has been including us in these various aspects of the COVID task force, etc., we can definitely play a role and represent these people and sort of see. I represent 244, TCI represents 681, ANOG represents 2,000 plus, LJP represents 2,000 plus, URP represents them. That's a portion of the society that can be touched and be heard, right? So that's my entire overview of constitutional, a bit of an overview of constitutional reform from us.
Beautifully said. And then also part of that will be to strengthen the local government, and maybe like in Trinidad, they have
Yes.
this corporation that they have authority to run their corporation, because the village council is too small in Guyana to manage per se. So we have to make it a bit broad, and so a lot of things need to be done.
You see where I'm coming from, right? That structure needs to be tackled first.
Yeah, you mentioned something like that. Yeah, gentlemen, I know the discussion is so great, but we're running out of time. So if you were to advise President Ali, what would you ask him to do? 2 things you'll want to see done in his administration. Josh, you want to go first in closing?
No problem. So, Dr. Honorable His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali. At this point in time, the Guyanese people are looking up to you. They are looking at you as the man that will lead us into what we would say the promised land. And our youths want that to happen. The youths are the focus of this entire makeup, and we don't want that to break up at all. I would say that the 2 most important things I would like for the party or for the president to consider is that youths must remain a focus. Do not forget the entire population, but just keep the youths as a focus. And youths, remember, youths is from ages 35 down all the way down to age 13, right? So that there is what you need to focus on. It's a larger age group. And we want to see more of the economic aspects of youth being developed. The economic aspect, the youths involved in agriculture, youths involved in, they're involved in sports, youths involved in these areas where we usually see more of the elderly gentlemen. Start picking them up and putting them in these areas so that they can show you the vision of the youths. Local content that would fall under. Secondly, I would love to see us having local content in the way we get jobs, not just jobs, but better paying jobs through local refining and rigging, local businesses and entrepreneurs being supported, incubation units, local allow our youths to get involved in big business per se, with probably developing Guyana into such a future in the likes of the Caribbean. So we're talking youths getting into harboring, youths getting into oil and gas, youths getting into LNGs, renewable energy, etc. So just bring local content up to par, and you will see the population will be happy, because that's a skeleton, one of the rib within the skeleton of what you need to do.
Great advice, Dr. Kanai. I hope that the president listened to you tonight. Dr. Franz, what do you want to recommend to the president in closing?
Well, I would like to hold him to his manifesto, right? And even though everything was not clear in terms of everything that he would have mentioned, one of the most important thing is, indeed, we want to see inclusion and we want to see constitutional reform. So I want him to get that committee up and running as soon as possible. I want him to put persons who want to put Guyana first on that committee and ensure that adequate consultation is done with each and every political party, non-governmental organization, religious organizations, and the people themselves, so that whatever comes out from those conversations must be a reflection of what Guyana wants. I think that is most important. That is one of the fastest ways whereby we can begin to heal this divide that we currently have in our country. We need everyone to feel included or want to be included. And so that is why I think that is very important. The other aspect that I will hold him responsible to is, I want to see, as Josh was mentioning, diversification of the economy. We have an economy that has been traditionally based on agriculture and most recently on the mining and extractive sectors. We know gold is currently what is still holding up our economy and probably will do for the foreseeable future. But we have a great resource that would be coming on stream in the next 3 to 5 years, which is the oil and gas industry. We want to see, and I would like to see, those funds that are generated from the oil and gas industry to first and foremost find a way to produce a reliable and clean source of energy, because we know in the manufacturing sector, energy is very, very important in terms of cost of production. So if you can tackle that first and foremost and get energy costs to a relatively low cost of production, then the knock-on effect would be more and more emergent industries, and it will affect everything from agriculture to mining to whatever other refineries we can try to put up, or these other industries. So it is very important that we try to diversify, but the first step in diversification is to have a reliable source of energy to our country. So these are the two things that I will be looking forward to.
Gentlemen, you have been the best. I want to thank you. And as I said at the beginning, you guys stood up for democracy. You stood up against all the threat of the COVID-19, all the restrictions in place. You were there at the recount center. You fought, and we keep saying the same thing. I know the PDP won the election, but had it not been for the new parties in collaboration with the foreign embassies and so on, the coalition might have been able to get away with the rigging that they actually wanted to do. So hats off to you guys. Guyana salute you, and we're so proud of you. And I hope sometime in the future you guys can come back on Globespan and we can continue this discussion. So Dr. Kanai, Dr. Franz, thank you guys so much for being in the program tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zuckerman. Good night to all the viewers.
All right, and to our viewers out there, we want to say thank you to Nohar Singh for making this platform available, and to Devin, our technical specialist, for bringing it to us. Again, here from New York and from Guyana, we want to wish you all the best, and God bless our country. God bless Guyana. Thank you very much.
God bless Guyana.